Once, in the late 19th and early 20th century, a tale of two peoples unfolded in the land known as Palestine. On one side, there were the Zionist dreamers, envisioning a homeland for the Jewish people in the ancient land of Israel. On the other side, Palestinian Arabs held steadfast to their ancestral soil, determined to maintain control of their homeland. As the world recovered from the ravages of World War I, Palestine found itself under the guardianship of the British Empire. In 1917, amidst the chaos of war, a declaration was made that would shape the destiny of the land. The Balfour Declaration expressed support for the establishment of a Jewish homeland in Palestine, sparking hope and controversy in equal measure. In the years that followed, waves of Jewish immigrants flocked to Palestine, drawn by the promise of a new beginning in their ancestral homeland. Meanwhile, tensions simmered between the Jewish and Arab communities as they vied for control of the land they both called home. Then, in 1947, the United Nations stepped onto the stage with a proposal to bring an end to the conflict. The partition plan sought to divide Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states, offering a glimmer of hope for peace. While Jewish leaders embraced the plan as a step towards fulfilling their national aspirations, Arab leaders rejected it, viewing it as a betrayal of their rights to the land. The rejection of the partition plan set the stage for tragedy. In 1948, the Arab-Israeli War erupted, unleashing violence and displacement on a massive scale. Amidst the chaos, the State of Israel was born, and hundreds of thousands of Palestinians became refugees, their lives forever changed by the conflict. But the story did not end there. In 1967, another chapter unfolded with the Six-Day War. In a stunning victory, Israel seized control of the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem, further altering the landscape of the conflict. The territories captured in the war became occupied lands, setting the stage for decades of strife and division. While the Israel-Palestine conflict is widely recognized for its long history of violence and political deadlock, there are few lesser-known facts that shed light on the intricacies and complexities of this enduring struggle. Delving beyond the headlines, let's explore some of these lesser-known facts that are often overlooked but essential for understanding the full scope of the Israel-Palestine conflict. The core of the Israel-Palestine conflict lies in a contentious issue that has deepened divides and hindered peace efforts: Israeli settlements in the occupied territories. According to international law, specifically the Fourth Geneva Convention, the transfer of civilian populations into territories occupied during war is strictly prohibited. This means that Israel's establishment of settlements in the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights is considered illegal under international law. The expansion of these settlements has far-reaching consequences. It not only complicates efforts to reach a negotiated peace settlement between Israelis and Palestinians, but also fragments Palestinian territory, making it increasingly challenging to establish a viable and contiguous Palestinian state. The two-state solution, widely seen as the most viable path to peace, is undermined by the presence of these settlements. The construction of settlements often involves the confiscation of Palestinian land and resources, leading to disputes over land ownership and exacerbating tensions between Israeli settlers and Palestinian communities. Over the years, this has resulted in numerous conflicts and incidents of violence. Moreover, Israeli settlements receive substantial government support in terms of infrastructure, resources, and security, creating disparities in access to services and opportunities between Israeli settlers and Palestinians living in the same area. This further deepens the divide and perpetuates inequality. The expansion of settlements has drawn condemnation from the international community. Resolutions and statements calling for an end to settlement activity have been issued, yet implementation has proven challenging. Amidst the turmoil of the Israel-Palestine conflict, A critical issue lies beneath the surface: water disputes. Control over water resources in the region is a vital yet often overlooked aspect of the conflict, with Palestinians bearing the brunt of restrictions on access to water, profoundly affecting their agriculture and daily lives. In the arid lands of the Middle East, access to water is not merely a matter of convenience, but a matter of survival. While Israel has developed sophisticated water infrastructure and technology, Palestinians often face severe restrictions on their access to water. Palestinian communities in the West Bank and Gaza Strip are frequently denied permits to drill wells or develop water infrastructure, leaving them dependent on limited water resources controlled by Israel. This lack of access to sufficient and reliable water sources has dire consequences for Palestinian agriculture, which forms the backbone of their economy, as well as for basic human needs such as drinking water and sanitation. Furthermore, the unequal distribution of water resources perpetuates socio-economic disparities between Israelis and Palestinians. While Israeli settlements enjoy ample water supplies for agriculture, industry, and domestic use, Palestinian communities often struggle to meet their basic needs. This imbalance exacerbates existing inequalities and deepens resentment among Palestinians. Despite the critical importance of water to both Israelis and Palestinians, efforts to address water-related issues have been overshadowed by broader political disputes. As a result, water remains a source of tension and conflict, further complicating efforts to achieve a lasting peace in the region. In the besieged enclave of Gaza, a humanitarian crisis of staggering proportions unfolds beneath the watchful eyes of the world. Since 2007, the coastal strip has been subjected to a suffocating blockade imposed by Israel and Egypt, plunging its residents into a desperate struggle for survival. The Gaza blockade, a punitive measure in response to Hamas's takeover of the territory, has resulted in dire shortages of food, medicine, and other essentials. Basic necessities have become luxuries, and the simple act of survival has become an everyday battle for Gaza's inhabitants. The blockade's impact on the lives of Palestinians in Gaza is profound and far-reaching. Gazans endure power outages lasting for hours on end, leaving homes dark and stifling in the sweltering heat. Hospitals are forced to operate with limited resources, unable to adequately treat the sick and injured. The lack of clean water and proper sanitation facilities has led to the spread of disease and illness, further exacerbating the already dire humanitarian situation. For Gaza's residents, the blockade is not just a physical barrier, but a psychological burden that weighs heavily on their collective psyche. Dreams of a better future are dashed against the harsh reality of daily existence under siege, where even the most basic freedoms are denied. Despite international condemnation and calls for its lifting, the Gaza blockade remains firmly in place. Attempts to ease restrictions have been sporadic and often short-lived, leaving Gaza's population trapped in a cycle of despair and deprivation. In the face of such adversity, the resilience of Gaza's people is nothing short of remarkable. They continue to endure, to resist, and to hope for a better tomorrow, even as the blockade tightens its grip and the world looks on in silence. Despite the continued volatility of the Israel-Palestine conflict, one problem stands out as a painful reminder of the human cost for decades: the plight of Palestinian refugees. Their story begins in the tumultuous aftermath of the 1948 Arab-Israeli War and subsequent conflicts, which resulted in the mass displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from their ancestral homes. For these refugees, the dream of returning to their land is a deeply cherished hope, a symbol of their longing for justice and restoration. Yet for many, this dream remains elusive, overshadowed by the complexities of politics and the enduring bitterness of conflict. The right of return for Palestinian refugees is a central issue in peace negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians, representing a fundamental question of justice and identity. For Palestinians, it is a matter of reclaiming what was lost, of reclaiming their dignity and their heritage. For Israelis, it is a question of security and sovereignty, of ensuring the survival of the Jewish state. But behind the political rhetoric and diplomatic maneuvering lies the human face of the refugee crisis. Generations of Palestinians have grown up in overcrowded refugee camps, denied the most basic rights and opportunities. They live in limbo, caught between the past they long to reclaim and the uncertain future they face. The plight of Palestinian refugees is not just a historical injustice, but a present-day reality, with millions still living in exile and displacement. Their struggle for justice and recognition is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. But it is also a stark reminder of the failure of the international community to address one of the most enduring and tragic consequences of the Israel-Palestine conflict. In the quest for peace, the issue of Palestinian refugees cannot be ignored or sidelined. It is a moral imperative and a practical necessity, essential for building a future based on justice, equality, and reconciliation. An armed conflict between Israel and Hamas-led Palestinian militant groups has been ongoing since October 7, 2023. It started with a surprise attack by Hamas on southern Israel, followed by Israeli military airstrikes and a ground invasion of the Gaza Strip. Clashes have also occurred in the West Bank and along the Israel-Lebanon-Golan Heights border. This marks the fifth war of the Gaza-Israel conflict since 2008 and is the most significant military engagement in the region since the Yom Kippur War 50 years earlier. On October 7th, Hamas launched a massive attack on Israel with thousands of rockets and militants breaching the Gaza-Israel barrier. The attack resulted in the deaths of 1,139 Israelis, including civilians and security personnel, and the capture of 252 individuals. Hamas cited various grievances, including the Israeli occupation, the Gaza blockade, settlement expansion, threats to the Al-Aqsa mosque, and the plight of Palestinian prisoners. Israel responded with a state of war, tightened blockade, and a deadly bombing campaign, followed by a ground invasion on October 27th to destroy Hamas and release hostages. Israel also declared its intention to control Gaza after the conflict. Since the start of the Israeli operation, over 34,000 Palestinians in Gaza have been killed, including more than 14,000 children and 10,000 women. Over 10,000 others are missing and presumed trapped under rubble. Israel claims to have killed about 13,000 Palestinian militants, while militants have killed over 250 Israeli soldiers. Nearly all of Gaza's 2.3 million population has been internally displaced. By early 2024, Israeli forces had damaged or destroyed over half of Gaza's houses, a third of its tree cover and farmland, most of its schools, all of its 12 universities, hundreds of cultural landmarks, and dozens of cemeteries. Israel's ground invasion started on October 27th, focusing initially on northern Gaza, including Gaza City. After a 7-day truce, Israel attacked Khan Yunis on December 3rd. By January 2024, Israel reoccupied most of northern Gaza. Israel's next objective is a major offensive in Rafah. On May 6, 2024, Hamas accepted a ceasefire proposed by Egypt and Qatar. Israel executed airstrikes in Rafah the same day, stating that the deal was not acceptable and that negotiations and hostilities would continue. The war has sparked global protests, particularly pro-Palestinian ones demanding a ceasefire and an end to Israeli occupation. Israel's actions have been criticized in the Islamic world and much of the global South. In December 2023, South Africa initiated proceedings at the International Court of Justice, accusing Israel of genocide in Gaza. Despite this, Israel has received significant support from its Western allies, notably the United States, which has provided extensive military aid and vetoed multiple UN Security Council resolutions for a ceasefire. In response, the Axis of Resistance, an informal Iranian-led political and military coalition in West Asia and North Africa, has attacked American military bases in the Middle East, and the Yemeni Houthi movement has targeted commercial ships linked to Israel, prompting a military response from the United States and its allies. The ongoing war between Israel and Palestine is a complex and deeply tragic conflict with significant humanitarian consequences. The recent escalation, marked by intense violence, loss of life, and widespread destruction, underscores the urgent need for a peaceful resolution. The plight of civilians, particularly Palestinian refugees and those living under blockade in Gaza, highlights the human toll of decades of conflict and occupation. Despite international efforts to broker a ceasefire and bring an end to the violence, the root causes of the conflict, including issues such as settlements, water disputes, and the status of Palestinian refugees, remain unresolved. The involvement of regional and global actors further complicates the situation, with competing interests and alliances exacerbating tensions. As we reflect on the events unfolding in the region, it is crucial to recognize the humanity and dignity of all those affected by the conflict, regardless of their nationality or religion. Only through dialogue, mutual respect, and a genuine commitment to justice and peace can we hope to break the cycle of violence and build a future where Israelis and Palestinians can live side by side in peace and security.
احنا ما فيش ولا ميه ولا كهرباء ولا إشي إن نشرب عطشانين.
Ultimately, the path to peace will require courageous leadership, sustained international engagement, and a willingness to address the underlying grievances of all parties involved. In the words of one Palestinian refugee, our dream is simple: to live in dignity, freedom, and peace in our homeland. It is a dream that deserves to be realized, and one that must guide our efforts to bring an end to the suffering and strife that have plagued the region for far too long.
نفسي نرجع نصير هدنة، نرجع عالدار عبيوتنا ونحرف ننام ونكيف. أنا هيك حابب